think we're ready. So hopefully you have your preferred beverage, your cozy blanket, whatever else you need to get comfortable for today's reading of the first chapter of Sweet Valentine. This is book 1 of the Broken One series, and it ties directly, well, it doesn't tie directly, but it does tie into book 4 of the Ramsey Brothers series, because we get to meet some of the characters in here, in that particular book, Reluctant Husband. So, Sweet Valentine, we're going to explore Derek Kramer's story. So let's start with chapter 1. My more favorite opening lines. The dragon was calling him again. Derek shifted the tray of lattes, bag of gourmet takeout, dry cleaning, and personal mail into one hand and arm as best as he could while he fished for his cell phone with his other hand. He crooked his head to an odd angle to keep the cell tucked between his cheek and shoulder so that he could redistribute the items before anything hit the ground. Kramer? Derek bit out as a pedestrian almost knocked the tray of drinks out of his hand. You're supposed to be answering the phone. Miss Stone's office. Derek speaking. Cynthia's tone was not pleased. I knew it was you. It's called call display. Derek jaywalked through traffic. Whatever. Just do it next time, she replied, still annoyed at him. Is there a reason for this call? Derek tried to keep his tone civil as a cab honked at him, the driver making a rude gesture. Other than I'm your boss and can call whenever I like? Cynthia practically purred into the phone. I need the Nelson case files brought up from the copy room. The drones from downstairs report that they've been collated. I'm supposed to be your paralegal, not your PA, Derek responded through gritted teeth. Cynthia sighed. You're both until Missy gets back from vacation. You know how I hate temps. They're obnoxious, clueless, and don't get me. That means you get the job. Sweet, Derek said, unamused. You bet it is, Cynthia replied just before she ended the call. Derek growled in frustration and picked up the pace. When he was younger, he'd envisioned himself becoming a lawyer, protecting the innocent from the scum of society. Despite his natural cynicism, he'd wanted to change the world for the better. Lack of money had put a crimp in that idea, so he decided to make the best of his dream, becoming a paralegal on scholarships and loans until he could set aside some time and savings to become the lawyer he'd always wanted to be. Now, reality had intruded. He realized his idealized version of the law wasn't what often happened in the courtroom. Now the very thought of trying to further his career, the one he had grown to hate, turned his stomach. He needed another antacid. He needed a new job. Derek entered the prestigious building of Yates, Kramer, and Stone. It was the irony of his life that some guy with the same last name was a partner. He'd been working with Cynthia Stone for what felt like a life sentence. In reality, he'd been there 8 years. He regretted every single one of them. Derek had been enslaved by Cynthia. She ran his life. He didn't even remember the last time he had a girlfriend. Cynthia was determined that when her uncle retired from the firm, the name Stone would stay on the partner list. She was driven to make senior partner, which meant she drove Derek crazy. He worked anywhere from 16 to 20 hours a day. The only time he took off was Thanksgiving weekend to camp with his friends. Otherwise, he had zero life. Derek didn't even bother to flirt with the pretty new intern in the copy room. There was no point. He had her slip the appropriate documents into his shoulder bag, then made a beeline for the elevators. If the dragon's latte was cold, she'd have it in for him. He had no idea how her PA, Missy, put up with her. Derek frowned. How did Missy even get a vacation? It boggled his mind. He was still scowling as he dumped everything over his desk. He grabbed the tray of drinks with the food, making his way to the boardroom, only to find it empty. Derek stood there for a moment, wondering where everyone had gone. Clearing his tired thoughts, he went to Cynthia's office, not bothering to knock. Oh, good! Cynthia grabbed a latte. I need a caffeine boost. Where is everyone? Derek asked, flopping into a chair. Gone. They got tired of waiting for you. Cynthia took a long sip. You know, it doesn't reflect well on you when you're late. Maybe if I wasn't picking up your dry cleaning, copies from the copy room, which could have been sent up via one of the copy room drones, or getting that red nail polish you just had to have, I might have been on time. Derek took the red nail polish from his suit pocket and lobbed it to Cynthia, who caught it one-handed, especially since it took 15 minutes of picture messaging to get the right shade. I sense a little sarcasm there. She leaned back, raising an eyebrow. Derek grabbed a cup. There was no point in letting coffee go to waste, even if it was the girly kind. I have trouble believing you regularly send Missy to get nail polish for you. It could have been worse. I could have sent you to get tampons. Cynthia had a sly smile. Besides, I have a date tonight. A date? Derek said the word like it was a foreign concept. It pretty much was. He wondered when she had time to date. She worked just as much as he did, maybe more. Sometimes he thought she dreamt about work and ways to pile it up on him. You do that? Yes, she replied a little testily. I ran into an old friend from college and we decided to go out. Hence the dry cleaning and nail polish emergency. Derek pulled out her container of General Tso's chicken, putting it on her desk with a set of plastic cutlery and a fortune cookie. Derek grabbed the rest of the grub and headed to the door. I've got real work to do. Hey, you don't even like egg rolls, and I know for a fact Yates ordered some. Cynthia pointed a plastic fork at him. Derek smiled as he left. Yeah, but I paid for them, so I'll eat them anyways. He had paid for them. Dearly, since she specifically wanted them from the expensive Chinese restaurant rather than the good restaurant named the Angry Wok that had the exact same food for a more reasonable price. The Angry Wok was closer too. However, Cynthia got what she wanted. Derek was busy at his desk when Cynthia came out of her office. She was wearing some red dress that looked like it was missing a lot of material. Her nails had been lacquered red to match, and she had an extra layer of makeup on. It seemed a bit much for a first date, even if she and the guy had known each other back in college. More than one man had remarked in admiration of her figure, since Cynthia kept in excellent shape. What they didn't realize is that she had hard skin, sharp biting teeth, a gleam of avarice in her eye, and could burn a man with just a few words. Hence the nickname, the Dragon. Not that Derek would ever call her that out loud. He valued his life far too much. Make sure you're back by curfew. She rolled her eyes, perched on the edge of his desk, and grabbed one of the remaining fortune cookies. Popping a piece of it into her mouth, she read the fortune. Your life will take an unexpected turn. Embrace change. How original, Derek remarked dryly. Who knows, Cynthia said smugly, that he could be the one. Santa could exist too, Derek shrugged. I heard the Tooth Fairy has shown up on YouTube. I know you're a cynic, but don't you think there's a chance for love? She crossed the legs, swinging it gently. He dragged his eyes away from it. She was stunning, and he was male enough to admire a good leg. However, she was his boss and dangerous. In my experience, people are selfish and messed up. We make each other miserable. And that is why you will end up alone, a cranky old man. Cynthia slipped off of his desk. I already am. Derek crunched down on the remaining fortune cookie. He looked at the small slip of paper and smirked. Oh, look! Your life will take an unexpected turn. Embrace change. That's disappointing. They can't even remember to give different fortunes to their customers. Cynthia shook her head. Well, I'm through making Carl wait. Don't forget the Nelson case needs all of the phone calls from the June 17th highlighted. Sure thing, boss. He'd add that to the list of things he needed to get done. Doing Missy's work, too, was putting him badly behind. Even though she was taking the night off, he was going to be burning the midnight oil. The only good news is that he could take his work home with him, since Cynthia was going to be gone from the office and wouldn't require him to be in. He hoped Carl put the moves on her and kept her in bed for the better part of the morning. Derek could use the chance to sleep in. He watched her great set of legs walk away before popping another antacid. Another 3 hours later, Derek packed it in and went home to the tiny 3-bedroom apartment that he shared with 2 roommates. It was clean by man standards. It boasted a 60-inch television with amazing sound, speaker setup, and video game systems. His roommates might be in their 30s, but they pretended they were teenagers too often for Derek's liking. Then again, it wasn't like he did anything there but store his suits, shower, and sleep. He wasn't even sure if his roommate number 2 was named Ned or Nick. It was 1 in the morning when his phone rang. Derek automatically pressed it up against his ear, running a hand over his sleepy face, dislodging a paper that had gotten stuck on his cheek when he'd fallen asleep highlighting. Kramer. Get in here. We have work to do. Cynthia's voice was sharp. Great, Derek said to the ceiling above his bed as she'd already hung up on him. Obviously, the day had not gone well, and now he got to deal with the fallout. Lucky him. He groaned and rolled out of bed. A quick shower and shave, new clothes, and a cab ride saw him back at the office. The night guard gave him a sympathetic look. Howard, Derek nodded in greeting. How sad was that? He knew the guard's name, but not his own roommate's. She got you in again? He shook his head. No rest for the weary, Derek said, the oft-repeated phrase. Or the wicked, Howard replied. I don't have time to be wicked. Derek punched the elevator door button close. He checked that his tie was straight before exiting. Did you bring coffee? Cynthia was back to looking her professional self, expensive suit and moderate makeup. Her voice had a brisk cut to it. I'm not a mind reader. Derek dumped his files on his desk. I'll start up the machine in the staff room. Don't bother, she sniffed. That stuff is second-rate. Derek wondered if he could get gourmet coffee delivered at this time of night. Missy would have been able to. He wasn't going to try. He'd had 2 hours of sleep. Fantastic. What was so urgent that I needed to come in for? He asked tiredly. She looked at him like he was silly for asking such a question. You're behind in your work. I still don't have the Nelson files. The notes from the winter statements haven't been typed or filed. Don't get me started on the Underhill case. It's like you haven't even touched it. He hadn't touched it. It had just come in yesterday, and he'd been picking up lousy dry cleaning and nail polish. Derek popped an antacid to combat the coffee he'd scalded his tongue on during the taxi ride over. I take it the date didn't go well? Derek winced. He hadn't meant to say anything. Somehow the words had just popped out. No doubt she would think he was retaliating over her criticism of his not getting his workload completed. She glared at him. It was perfect until I realized he was married with 3 kids and was just trying to get laid. Ouch, Derek grimaced. I guess you're right. We're all just selfish and make each other miserable, she ground out, a little bitter over the experience. Derek sighed. It was obvious she was hurt over the episode. He tried to offer a reconciliatory remark. Just because I haven't seen much evidence of people having loving relationships doesn't mean they don't exist. I don't want to talk about it, she dismissed his remarks and arched an eyebrow. We have work to do. 5 hours later, he'd put a sizable dent in the pile of work on his desk. The sun was rising in the sky. Everyone else would soon be joining them for normal office hours. Derek stood up, stretched, and hit the second-rate coffee from the staff room. He looked at the day-old donuts that were left there. They were probably more like 3 days old, but they weren't growing any mold yet, so he took one. It was a little crunchy, but better than just coffee for breakfast. He wandered over to Cynthia's office to find her sleeping on the expensive leather couch she had designed into the layout of the room. For pity's sake! Here he was, working hard, and she was softly snoring on the sofa. Derek picked up a file and papers that had been strewn on the floor. When he straightened up, he saw Stone Sr., one of the senior partners and Cynthia's uncle, walking towards the office. If he kept on the same trajectory, he was going to see his niece sleeping. Knowing how much she wanted the senior partner position once Mr. Stone Sr. retired, Derek knew he had to do something so her uncle wouldn't see her sleeping on the job. Shifting to hide what he was about to do from Mr. Stone's view, he smacked Cynthia on the head with the thin file. He didn't do it hard, but firmly enough to wake her. She jerked to sit upright on the sofa. So that's why I think the Nelson case has a loophole that we can exploit, Derek said loudly as Mr. Stone came in. Cynthia stood up, straightening her suit jacket, professionalism coming to the fore. About time you figured that out. It was obvious. That was the last time he rescued her, Derek thought darkly. Let the old man catch her napping. It would serve her right. Excuse us, would you? Mr. Stone gave him a look reserved for annoying insects and the drone workers of the firm. Derek knew that Stone didn't even know his name. He gave a brisk nod. Of course. He shut the door behind him and went to his cubicle, dropping to his chair. His cell phone rang. Cynthia Stone's office. Derek speaking. Derek leaned far back in his chair, looking at the ceiling. He repeated his mantra of needing a new job. However, there were none that paid like this one. He'd looked. The overtime hours he put in were phenomenal for earning money. Mr. Kramer, my name is Sally Winthrop. I've been calling for the past 3 days trying to get hold of Mrs. Stone. I urgently need to get in contact with her, the voice on the line said. First, it's Ms. Stone, Derek corrected. He was doing her a favor by making sure she got the right prefix. For a woman who was driven by her career, Cynthia was peculiar about her marital status. Second, Miss Stone is a very busy woman. If you would leave your information and what it is about, I'll pass on the message. You've passed on the message several times already, Mr. Kramer. Sally was impatient. I need to speak directly with Ms. Stone. I'm afraid that's just not possible. Derek was getting a small measure of enjoyment from torturing this lady. You could email me your concerns and I'll direct them to the appropriate person. Mr. Kramer, she tersely replied, I am attorney for the late Guy and Alicia Roms. Alicia Roms is Cynthia's sister. I suggest you have her call me immediately. Derek's feet hit the floor as he abruptly sat up. Say again. Alicia Roms? Cynthia Stone's sister has passed, Sally repeated. I need to contact Ms. Stone for several particulars. Derek closed his eyes. He'd been putting her off for 3 days since she hadn't exactly been forthcoming with what she wanted to talk to Cynthia about. It was part of Missy's duties to head off any unnecessary communications with people, and he may have taken it a little too far. His stomach swirled in rebellion, reminding him that he should probably pop another antacid. Either that, or he needed to lay off the coffee, but since that was the only thing keeping him awake, it was unlikely that he would quit caffeine. Cynthia was going to be very unhappy with him. My apologies, Mrs. Winthrop, he said, feeling like a complete heel. I had no idea. I'll talk to Miss Stone directly and give her your contact information. Thank you, Mr. Kramer, she said with some relief. I would appreciate that. Derek jotted down her information. He waited for Mr. Stone Sr. to leave Cynthia's office, then tapped on her door before entering. She was sitting on the leather couch with a tissue in her hand. Maybe Mr. Stone had already told her about her sister. He hoped she wasn't going to cry. He had no idea what to do if she did. One didn't exactly try to console a cactus or a dragon. Her eyes narrowed. She stood up, walked directly to his personal space, a militant glint in her eye. You are supposed to inform me of everything. Everything! Do you understand? That is what I pay you to do. That is your job. If you can't do your job, then you are no use to me. I deeply apologize, Miss Stone, Derek began, trying to make amends for the mistake he'd made. I had no idea that it was this important. Otherwise, I would have brought it to you immediately. You didn't think it was important? Cynthia growled. How could it not be important? This is my life. Again, I'm sorry. Mrs. Winthrop didn't say what she wanted to talk to you about, and I stalled her. It's entirely my fault. I didn't put the call through. Derek tried to explain while taking the blame. He deserved it, and he would own that fact. Mrs. Who? Cynthia looked at him like he was on another planet. Mrs. Winthrop, the lawyer for your sister? He began to tread carefully with his words as he realized they probably weren't talking about the same thing. Who cares about my sister's lawyer? Cynthia poked him hard with a finger to the chest. I'm talking about being passed up for partner for Jameson! Jameson, for the love of pizza and wine! Derek blinked. He'd never heard that phrase before. He absently massaged his chest where she poked him. It hurt a little. Jameson! She threw up her hands in the air and paced. He's a cruddy lawyer. He tries to get in the intern's pants. Are they serious? Derek had been hoping she'd make partner. It might make her happier and easier to deal with. Plus, he thought he might get a nice raise out of the deal. They can't be serious. You're a far better lawyer. She rounded on him. You're supposed to keep me in the loop. I pay you to know the rumor mill around here. I was blindsided by my uncle came in to let me know. What do you do all day? Work. Nothing but work, he thought. He didn't even sleep anymore, it felt like. Wait, this meant she didn't know. Derek rubbed his tired eyes with his thumb and forefinger as his stomach bottomed out again. He desperately needed a new job. Ms. Stone, I think you should have a seat on the couch, he began. Why? She threw the tissue in the trash. Cynthia continued to pace the room in her snit. I have more bad news. Derek wanted to sit down himself, but felt it would be wrong to sit when she was standing, and he was about to inform her of the estimable Mrs. Winthrop and her news. Please. Fine, she hissed through clenched teeth and sat. Cynthia looked at him expectantly. Well? Derek pulled one of the leather chairs to face the couch and sat down. He clasped his hands and wished desperately that he didn't need to be the one to tell her this. Mrs. Winthrop, your sister's lawyer, has been calling for the past couple of days. I didn't realize how important it was until this morning when she informed me that Alicia and Guy have died. She needs to contact you about the particulars of the estate. Cynthia looked a little shell-shocked. It was the first time he had ever seen her with nothing to say. I am incredibly sorry. There are no words to express the sorrow I feel at this monumental mistake that I made of not forwarding Mrs. Winthrop's call to you sooner. Derek cleared his throat. Again, I apologize for my error. You have my deepest condolences for your loss. Is this a joke? Cynthia looked at him in disbelief. I talked to Alicia last week. She's fine. She's not fine, he said in sympathy. Call this Mrs. Winthrop woman, she demanded. Right here. Put her on speaker. I'm going to tell her how wrong she is. Derek punched in the other lawyer's number and waited as it rang. Sally Winthrop, she answered crisply. Mrs. Winthrop, it's Derek Kramer. I have Miss Stone here on speaker, he responded as he looked at Cynthia with some trepidation. Who knew how she was going to react to Sally Winthrop if she wasn't willing to accept the death of her sister? Miss Stone, you have been a hard lady to get a hold of, Sally said with some relief. I'm the lawyer of Guy and Alicia Rom. I'm sorry to tell you that your sister and her husband have passed recently after being in an automobile accident. You're wrong, Cynthia said badly. I talked to Alicia last Monday. There must be some error. Sally hesitated a moment. I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Stone. Alicia died last Tuesday in hospital. Her husband also passed during the aftermath of the vehicle accident they were in. This is a mistake. Cynthia grabbed her cell phone and dialed her sister's number. I'm going to call her. She'll tell you that she's perfectly fine. Miss Stone, I feel for you, but Mr. and Mrs. Rom died after a drunk driver hit them, Sally responded patiently. You're wrong. Cynthia waited as her cell phone went to voicemail. I'll text her. Derek put a hand over hers to prevent her from fiddling with her phone. Cynthia, they're gone. Tears welled up in her eyes, and he quickly grabbed the box of tissues, offering it to her. I'm very sorry, Miss Stone, Sally interrupted as Cynthia blotted her eyes. With Alicia's death has come some important details that need to get settled. You have been appointed sole guardian of the children. What? Cynthia looked at Derek in confusion. Why would she choose me? She knows I'm a career woman. We always argued about how much I was focused on my career. You're her only living relative under the age of 60, Sally said dryly. Guy was estranged from his family. They chose you to raise the children in the event of their demise. Derek couldn't picture it. Cynthia with kids? It just didn't compute. No doubt she'd buy a nanny to look after the poor kids and neglect them terribly. Just how many kids did Alicia and Guy have? 4, Cynthia replied faintly. 5, Sally corrected. There are 5 children ranging from 1 year to age 14. Derek was suddenly bombarded by an image of Cynthia holding a screaming little one, packing lunches, and dealing with the throes of teenage angst from the oldest. A snort of laughter escaped him. It was rude. It was wrong. It was incredibly funny. He tried to hold in another, but failed. She was so doomed. This confident, savvy dragon of a lawyer was out of her league. What is so funny? Cynthia's voice cut across him like whiplash. Even that didn't stop his chuckles. You as a mom, trying to bag lunches, making sure they do their homework, talking to teachers at PTA meetings. Do you even know how to cook? I can microwave. She stared at him like he was the lowest worm. He should feel like one for laughing at her during her time of sorrow, but it was too delicious. He blamed it on lack of sleep and a lack of empathy for her. Another set of chuckles escaped him, and he wiped his eyes. Microwaving isn't going to cut it. You've got 5 mouths to feed. Do you know how to cook? She tilted her head at him, a calculating look in her eye. He missed it. He should have been paying more attention before he omitted such a personal detail. Yes, I know how to cook. Nothing fancy, but I'll never starve. Good to know, she stared shrewdly at him. What do you know about raising kids? Oh, no, Derek was on to her now. I'm already a paralegal, and I'm filling in for your PA. I am not about to play nanny as well. I wasn't about to suggest that, Cynthia replied defensively. Derek knew differently. If she thought she could add more to his already full plate of work from her, she was out of her mind. Excuse me, Sally intervened. Ms. Stone, I would like to meet with you as soon as possible, today even, to discuss the custody of the children and the estate of your sister. Yes, Cynthia pulled her attention back to the cell phone and Mrs. Winthrop. Derek, cancel all of my appointments for the rest of the day. I'll need the car service to bring me to Mrs. Winthrop's office. They set up a time, and Derek saw to the arrangements. He knew that he was going to use the rest of the day to try to catch up. Maybe he'd manage to get home before 9 and get a good night's sleep. Another part of him thought that maybe, just maybe, since the first time he'd known her, Cynthia might take a day off work for the funeral. Surely he could work just a regular 9 to 5 that day. A nice 8-hour day where he could sleep in and go to bed on time. It was sad when a man fantasized about sleep rather than a woman. Derek sighed. How's it going, Kramer? Lonnie dwelt, hung a lean arm over the edge of Derek's cubicle. Fine, you? Derek tried to be quick and direct. First, because he didn't have time to chat it up. There was a pile of files to go through on his desk. Second, because Lonnie was a loser. It was a mean thing to say, but entirely accurate. I'm a booming man, Lonnie grinned, showing crooked teeth. My boss is moving up. Rumor has it, Pete's going to replace Jameson when Jameson goes to senior partner. Good for you, Derek replied curtly. Great. That meant Lonnie was going to be joining the little farm of cubicles where Derek worked. Wonderful. As if the weekly doses weren't enough, now he was going to have to deal with the guy on daily. Hey, sorry to hear about your boss, Lonnie pretended sympathy. Her getting passed up like that? You guys work so hard you make the rest of us look lazy. Derek endured the fake laugh from Lonnie with as much grace as he could muster. It wasn't much, thanks. Too bad she's a woman. The men won't let a woman play a man's game. She'd have made senior partner years ago otherwise. Lonnie held up his hands in a crude gesture. It's the melons. She's too sexy. Instead of listening to her presentations, everyone is imagining her without her. Derek stood abruptly and grabbed Lonnie by the shoulder, steering him toward the staff room. Hey, Lonnie, don't you like maple donuts? There's some in the staff room. You should check them out before they're all gone. You're a good guy, Derek, Lonnie remarked, allowing himself to be pushed along. The other guys say you've got no guts, a bit of a mama's boy letting stones trample all over you, but I've always said you're just padding the resume till you can help a better man. Derek gave Lonnie a pat on the back as he pushed him gently into the staff room. He beat a hasty retreat back to his own desk. Every day with Lonnie in the same space. He wondered if he was being punished for something. Derek, now. Cynthia poked her head out of her office and then retreated back in after summoning him. He sighed. He wasn't a mama's boy. He was just whipped. Yes. Derek closed the door behind him, pulling out his cell just in case she wanted him to take notes. Cynthia grabbed her purse. We're going to see Mrs. Winthrop. The car should be downstairs. Did you check? Had he checked to see if the car was there? No. He'd been fending off the village idiot. Derek lied through his teeth. It's there. Wait, has she said we? Why was he going to her appointment? He needed to get caught up on his own work, not follow her around like some puppy. Good. Cynthia slung her purse over her shoulder. She waited as he opened the door for her, then strode forth, expecting him to follow in her wake. He was totally whipped, Derek thought. How demoralizing. Then again, she did pay the bills. Derek followed her. He saw Lonnie stuffing his face with a sprinkled donut. Someone had splurged and gotten fresh ones, and Derek had missed it. He popped an antacid. And it only gets better from there. So this is Sweet Valentine, book 1 of the Broken series, where we get into more of the characters that went camping with Kelly in book 4 of the Ramsley Brothers series. So I hope you enjoy it. If you like the video, click like, comment below, subscribe, go out to Amazon and purchase the book. Just search my name. You'll find it. It's right up there. Happy reading!